So hi folks, I just want to go through a quick video on grassland management decisions where you have a soil moisture deficit or where a drought is kicking in and affecting growth rates. So here in Southern Ireland at the moment, it's been dry with the last 2 weeks. Temperatures are in the low 20s kind of consistently in the last 2 weeks, and everything in the forecast is saying that it's going to be dry for the next week to 10 days again. So while growth rates up to now have been quite good, there's the expectation that, especially on dry sandy soils, that growth is going to drop because of lack of moisture. Even though everything else might be right, nitrogen in the soil, the sward in a good growing state, but it still needs moisture to grow. So I suppose you can't manage your way out of it unless you measure. Okay, so the first thing is grass measurement. But then what you do when you have your measurements done, when you find that you have a farm that's all of a sudden gone into a deficit situation because of lack of growth. Now, so I suppose I've created a kind of a case study here on a grass wedge case study. I've created it on Agrinet, again, which a lot of Irish farmers will be familiar with it, even though a lot are on pasture base. But again, most UK farmers will be familiar with Agrinet also. So here's an example of a grass wedge that's gone into deficit now, where growth has slowed down, especially in paddocks that have been grazed down here. And equally, those ones with still a lot of cover on them have still, they have a lot of cover on them, which means the ground isn't drying out as quickly, and growth is probably still reasonably good in these paddocks here. So what's the background to this wedge now at the moment? We just scroll up here a little bit and we'll see it's a spring calving herd. It's a spring calving herd with 180 spring cows out grazing, eating 16 kilos of grass and approximately 2 kilos of concentrate. And that's what's in the diet ever before he made any grazing decisions. The growth in the past week was 52, okay, which is reasonable growth. But again, things are drying quickly. The demand on the farm is 57, from 180 cows, 16 kilos of grass, and an area of 50 hectares. That means the demand is 57. Okay, so you might argue, well, okay, the demand and the growth are quite similar. But the difference here in this farm is that, again, what we know from the forecast is that growth is probably going to continue to drop because there's no rain in the forecast for the next probably 7 to 10 days. So growth rates are going to drop further. So really then what's the consequence of maybe growth dropping to maybe, when you get this dry, it can drop to 20 to 30 very quickly. What's the consequence then of not adjusting your demand or having your demand too high? Okay. Now, as always when you're using and interpreting a grass wedge, the first thing that you have to look at is your target rotation length. So a grass wedge is like, it's a snapshot of the grass that's on the farm, okay? And you need to try to help the program or Agrinet to try to help to predict for the week ahead in terms of how much grass you'll have in the week ahead. And one of the ways you do that is by adjusting your target rotation length, okay? Now the one thing I should probably take a step back and say is this blue line here is your demand line. And that's the joining of 2 points, the residual that you want left after grazing, and in this case, we want somewhere around 50, or for UK farmers, 50 and 50 odd, okay, in terms of total cover. And then your target pre-grazing cover, ideally like that should be kind of at least 1200, 1400, 1500 for ideal sward type, okay? But that target pre-grazing cover is a result of your demand, 57, times your target rotation length of 19 plus the residual. And if you multiply all those out and add the residual, you'll get your target pre-grazing cover. In this instance, it's only down at 1100, like it's a relatively low demand. Okay, but again, we have to tell the program, we have to kind of give the program an indication of what kind of growths are going to come for the next week. And what we do there then is we adjust our rotation length. Because if you have if you have very high growths, well then you should be shortening your rotation length because the paddocks are coming back a lot quicker for grazing. In this instance, growths are dropping. So you need to plan for a longer rotation length. The paddocks are going to need more time to recover. these paddocks are very slow in growth. They're going to need a lot of time to recover back up to a target pre-grazing cover up here. So if we were predicting a growth for the next week ahead of maybe 30, well then this target rotation length should increase to, look, probably approximately 25, 26. Okay, so I'm just going to change that. Okay, now I'm going to update it. And now you'll see the line has got higher because our demand of 57 times 25 plus 50 means that now to keep it, to be able to supply a 25-day round with 57, with a demand of 57, we need to be going into covers of 1400, 1500. But now, as we can see, we don't really have a grass supply to be able to do that. We do for the next couple of days, but then there's a big hole here. Okay? So now, because we've told the program how much growth we're going to get through adjusting the rotation length, we're in a serious deficit situation, almost minus 10 tons over the next rotation. So now we need to act in terms of our demand. We need to reduce our demand, this figure here, lower to lower down closer to where we expect growth to be. So of course demand is under our control, and our demand is a function of how many cows we have grazing and how much grass we offer. Okay, so we're not going to house the cows, we're just simply going to turn down the amount of grass that we're going to offer them. Okay, so in this instance now, instead of giving them the full intakes of 16 kilos, which we know they can take, we're going to have to reduce that to, you know, probably maybe I'm going to say, let's reduce it by 2 kilos and maybe increase the concentrate to 4. Okay, and we'll update. Now we'll watch this figure here. Demand of 57 drops to 49. And now we know that this demand line will have dropped again. Because again now 49 times 25 plus the residual is only 1300 here. So this demand line now has dropped to suit the grass supply. Okay? But still, that's probably not enough. It's probably not enough just to do that, to cope with this deficit here. We still have a significant minus figure here. We're okay for the next couple of days, but these are probably not going to come back quick enough. So this probably does need to drop another 2 kilos to be sure. 4 kilos concentrate, and in this instance you might decide, instead of increasing the concentrate to 6, maybe feed 2 kilos of very good quality bale silage. Might be a good idea. Okay, so we update, save again. Now we can see our demand now has dropped to 43. So 43 times 25 plus 50 is now again down to the 11 to 1200 odd of a pre-grazing cover. And so really that is more sustainable. It's sustainable for the week ahead. You've reduced your demand to be able to cope with the low growths that you're expecting to get. At this point in time, again, there's a small bit of a deficit here, but it's not that much. Okay, so this is an example of kind of management decisions that you need to take in a low growth situation. There'll be a lot of farmers, dry farms in the UK, dry farms in Ireland, which will be experiencing this sort of growth decline over the course of probably the next 10 days. And really they're the steps that you need to be taking to allow for it. Okay. The other point, I suppose, that sticks out here in this graph or in this wedge is that you have 2 covers here that are quite high. 1800 available cover at the moment, and they're growing on every day. So before you know it, they'll probably be up to 2000 available cover. Or that's 2000 available cover is about 3.5 total cover in the UK system. So they're very heavy for grazing. It's probably the one instance where probably a management tool like pre-cutting comes in. It doesn't make sense for you to cut these for silage, even though they're very strong for grazing, because you have a deficit here. But it is, I suppose, a reason or an excuse to actually maybe potentially pre-cut these. Your utilization of those 2 paddocks will be a lot better. You'll probably buy yourself an extra, I won't say an extra day, but an extra half day grazing by pre-cutting those. And really when you are in a drought type situation, you're buying yourself time. Again, by reducing the amount of grass, increasing the amount of concentrate, you're slowing down the movement through the paddocks, because again the paddocks need a longer time to recover for after grazing. Okay, so again, I hope that was of help. Hopefully that is of help, or will be of help to some of you who will experience a wedge like this over the next 10 days. Hopefully you won't need it. Hopefully the rain will come, and again, before you know it, you'll be dealing with a surplus type situation. And again, we can do another video to give you some tips how to cope with that also. Okay, thanks for watching.